One of the most common questions we get is, what is the difference between Scotch and bourbon and rye? And one of the most fundamental differences is the grain source, okay? So these things are determined by the grain that they're made from.
Because they mush the grain up into nothing.
In fact, they call it a mash bill. So mushing and mashing, you're on the right track. So bourbon, by law, has to be made in the US and has to be at least 51% corn. So when you think about corn, you probably think about corn on the cob. I think the better analogy for helping your viewers learn about whiskey is, you know what cornbread tastes like, right? And what's one of the characteristics of how cornbread tastes besides corn?
So it's a little sweeter.
It's sweeter. It's sweeter. So keep that in mind when we go to taste the liquid. But you'd expect a whiskey made from corn to have similar characteristics. And this is corn. Now this is rye. And what kind of characteristics do you get from rye bread?
It's definitely drier, right? And the seeds give it that little spice something.
Exactly. So I think those are two basic things. The third is barley, and malted barley is the main source of Scotch, and that tends to be earthier. But let's focus on bourbon and rye, and I think keep that in mind as we taste these liquids.
Okay, so we're going to slide down and taste. Now, where does whiskey come in on all this?
Whiskey is the general category. So you can call
it
something whiskey made from all three of those grains. And we have an E in the way we spell whiskey, and our friends in Scotland don't have an E. So there's other little idiosyncrasies about whiskey.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Okay, so whiskey is the umbrella for
whiskey's the umbrella.
Rye, bourbon, Scotch.
All forms of whiskey, correct. 51% of bourbon.
Sorry, bourbon must be corn. What's the other stuff?
And so it can be a range of things. A bourbon will often contain malted barley as the second largest component.
So any of these grains?
Usually some rye.
All mushed up.
Correct.
Okay.
So
all right.
Why don't we go ahead and taste?
Well, first wait, introduce. This is your brand.
This is our brand. So this is a brand called Redemption. It's a brand we acquired a little over a year ago. The name Redemption comes from the founder's ambition to redeem rye. So before Prohibition, rye was the largest spirit in America. Not just the largest whiskey, it was the largest spirit.
And so you're going to teach me how to taste this stuff.
I
don't know how to do it.
I want you to enjoy it. So we're not going to get technical.
If I enjoy it, I'll be on my face. So I'm not going to be enjoying it too much.
We don't need to swirl,
right,
and we don't need to get our nose too close to it, but just get your nose close enough to smell. And what do you smell?
It's got the spice to it, right?
Right, so you get a little bit of that rye spice. You get a little bit of this kind of, I do at least, a little bit of this kind of toast character.
Yeah, I get that.
So Redemption is aged in new American oak barrels.
So much like wine, you get the oak.
Right,
oakness
that imparts a flavor.
You don't swirl this, correct?
You don't need to swirl it.
Go right out of the glass.
You can do whatever you want, but let's just take a little sip.
It is smooth.
That's 92 proof, and my guess is you would not think that it was as strong as that.
No
but
way.
that's 92 proof. 92 proof.
So that will put me on my face.
If you drink it too quickly.
That's the thing. You have to, that's actually an argument to be made for cocktails, right? You have to take your time. As a result, you drink less. I actually think there's a caloric thing going on here, that people have switched to cocktails because you do drink less to end up in the same place.
Yeah, and even without cocktails, I think what you're seeing with trade up is people enjoying higher quality products and savoring them. So you're sipping on something like this with ice. As the ice melts, it dilutes it, the flavors change. So it really can.
And I could see how in the winter that warms you up.
It's warming, right?
Yeah,
it's absolutely
I'm totally
warming.
That. Okay, so
now that's rye.
That's the rye.
Now we're going to go to
that
bourbon.
To you. Now to bourbon. It's definitely lighter.
The base grain for bourbon is
corn.
Corn.
Is that why it's lighter?
So no, the color whiskey when it comes out as distillate is clear. So all the color in whiskey should come from oak. Some brands do different things with adding color, but all of the color in whiskey should come from oak.
Well, right. There's no skin like in a grape with wine. Correct. It has to come from the oak.
So the color and longer aging can make the product darker because it pulls more of that color out of the barrel. So let's smell this. What are we smelling here?
Sweeter.
Right,
Definitely
you're getting
sweeter.
the sweetness
yes,
and
totally.
Even a little bit of corn character. That oak bit is still there, so that's kind of framing it. And let's taste.
Oh, that's actually really nice. That's so smooth too. To me, I would think it would go down my throat like a rake.
But it's smooth,
But
right?
it's not.
It's smooth, and all of our key information we print right on the label. So this is 84 proof, so it's a little bit lower in alcohol than the rye, and that's come from us just playing around with proofs that we think make the perfectly balanced
For
whiskey.
comparison's sake, a glass of Cabernet is what, 15?
Correct.
Right? So
big difference. And a typical vodka is 80 proof. So a little bit higher proof on the bourbon, a fair bit higher. And rye, because rye is the ingredient for classic cocktails like Manhattan and like Old Fashioned, that higher proof makes sure that spirit comes through. Mixologists are very focused. They want to make a good tasting spirit, but they don't want to have to add, and which messes up their cost structure. So we're very much focused on proofing these things in a way that makes a balanced whiskey, but especially on the rye, even more focused on, is it going to make a balanced cocktail?
this was an awesome lesson. I will be back for more. Thank you.
Excellent.
Cheers.